Hello. So, even though we're only a couple weeks into this new NBA season, there have already been so many teams with very bleak futures. Some of these teams we saw it coming before the season even started, and some others, when we initially looked at their situation, it was determined that if certain factors were to go wrong, then yeah, no doubt it'll be worst case scenario, all the fans will be depressed, stuff like that, but they were hypotheticals, and then boy oh boy, we have like 2 or 3 teams here where those hypotheticals came into full effect and we're just seeing the chaos as a result. And I do want to clarify that before we get into the list and determine who has the worst future of them all, the NBA is a league where things can shift pretty quickly. We don't even have to look far back. 4 or 5 months ago, Philadelphia, Phoenix, Chicago, they were kind of the poster teams. And then after the draft lottery and how different parts of their roster got more youth and athletic, things are looking much better for them. Definitely more brighter than what it was prior. So I actually do want to throw out some honorable mentions first. First one being the Indiana Pacers, mostly because, man, it is so devastating to watch with them losing Game 7 of the finals. It's not just the fact that they lost, it's also the fact that they have to deal with a big what if. And then we transition to what has occurred this upcoming season. Fortunately, they got their own pick back because Joe Dumars is Joe Dumaring. They've also had a ton of bad injury luck to start off the season. TJ McConnell, Johnny Furphy, they suffered injuries in the preseason. Obi Toppin and Andrew Nembhard have also been struck, unfortunately, early on. Siakam continues to be a very great player for them, but obviously with the way things are going, I think he might have to get shut down for the rest of the season. And I want to add that no doubt the Pacers still have hope. Hopefully the lottery odds favor their way and they can just regroup for next season. And they still have that very beautiful brunette assistant who determines whether they should challenge or not. So yeah, I just put them here because the last few months have been pain. But I know you'll be back on your feet, Pacers. I'm cheering for you. The next honorable mention is the Utah Jazz because I'm not really sure what their plans are for Lauri Markkanen. It's obvious that the trade rumor noise has been growing by each passing day, and when we see Utah's track record over these past couple of years, they're not afraid to tear everything down in the hopes of getting that top 5 pick. So I feel like if there's a Lauri trade package that they can't turn down, we might have to deal with a couple more years of Utah being at the bottom. But the thing is, I really hope that isn't the case, and I know some Jazz fans hope so too, because what I've seen from them in the beginning of this season, it is clear that they have made a ton of progress from last season, and overall they all look and play different, and I mean that in a good way, because although their record on paper is not the greatest, I feel like this is a case where the record doesn't really state how competitive of a team this is. For a couple of their losses, if they just learn how to close games better, we would be looking at them as a 500 team. I think we all know how easy it can be to get adjusted to all the losing culture and how much damage that can do to some young guys and their hunger. I feel like the amount of lessons that these players can learn from just being competitive for a majority of the season, I feel like that would do wonders. When I watch these Jazz games, I could feel much more competitive vibe. I don't think it is very wise to do another teardown year. Also, Will Hardy, I love you, but please stop giving Svi Mykhailiuk a lot of minutes. Boston Celtics legend, will never forget him on that championship team, but the fact that he got more minutes than Bryce Sensabaugh in that Atlanta loss, that's inexcusable. But anyways, that's my last honorable mention. I'm loving what the Jazz are doing so far. I'm very confident in Will Hardy as a coach. It's just I'm questioning what vision the front office has. So without ado, let's get into it. I have separated certain negative situations into 3 tiers. Each tier will actually get worse as we progress into the video. So we'll start at tier 1. We have to wait for the draft lottery. And these are 2 teams, Washington and Brooklyn, at this spot. Now when we look at the present of these 2 teams, it's obviously very rough, to be expected because both teams are in the 2nd or 3rd year of their rebuild. Just banking on the next loaded draft class in 2026, hoping to get one of Debansa, Boozer, Peterson to lead them, which is the main reason as to why this is tier 1, because that scenario, that hypothetical, has a very high percentage of happening. So if you look at these reasons, there might be some confusion as to why these 2 are considered into this video, and the reason for that is because there's also a possibility that these 2 might not even get into the top 5. It pretty much happened with the Cooper Flag sweepstakes, and if we look at the couple of past draft lotteries, it doesn't really matter how high your percentage is. The ping pong balls are not always going to roll your way, and if you don't get top 3, that leaves you with the very unfortunate options of having to chase after someone in free agency or even sacrificing some of your other young assets that you have garnered over the previous rebuilding years. So yeah, for these 2, that's honestly the worst case scenario. I can imagine Nets and Wizards fans just shudder at the thought. Hopefully, Washington and Brooklyn can finally be rewarded in some way. Alright, now we move on to tier 2. It could be worse, featuring the Memphis Grizzlies and Charlotte Hornets. We could start with Memphis first. They have taken up a ton of headlines just from the jaw dilemma alone. And Jaren Jackson Jr. has not played up to the standards as you would expect from a guy who recently signed to a Supermax. I mean, it's already bad enough that your two leading stars are just having a rough start in terms of production. You also bring up Coach Isilo's relation to the team. There's already tons of questions about his substitutions, his schemes, his defensive game plan, which is concerning in itself when you consider that he is not an established coach. He's still new in terms of gaining NBA reputation. And when I think about the trade market surrounding Ja Morant, I don't think it'll be that appealing as one would assume. No doubt when you're going to trade for someone of his caliber, you pretty much have to adjust most of your offensive system around him. Add in the fact that he's injury prone and has some defensive woes, and how some reports have stated that some coaches and executives aren't fans of his behavior. It doesn't really add up to a ton of destinations. So I think it would take a while to move Morant. If the front office comes to that conclusion, I wouldn't be surprised if a deal occurs near the end of the trade deadline or if Morant is still on the team. So when you look at that summary, it looks pretty bad, but they still have things going for them. The biggest one being Cedric Coward. He is looking like a steal and possibly the new favorite for being Rookie of the Year. We always talk about how well the Grizzlies draft in the second round, but for them to finally nail a first round pick, that is huge. They also have a ton of favorable contracts, at least favorable viewed by other teams. Like I'm sure another team could use someone like Santi Aldama, Ty Jerome, Brandon Clark. So all in all, even though Memphis is going to face another exhausting rebuild, at least they're in a much better state of managing their future. But then again, there's also the possibility that they can be pretty stubborn as well. They might not see a rebuild even happening, and they might still be buyers at the trade deadline, potentially wait for a second half push. I'm not sure how likely that is, but if that does occur, then I might have to reconsider how bleak their future really is. The next team in this second tier is the Charlotte Hornets, and maybe this might be a little bit too harsh because we're only 11 games in, but as we've seen from their main guys, they just cannot stay healthy. Like this season is just a breaking point for me. We cannot deny LaMelo's talent, but the dude is just so unlucky. Like not even 10 games in, it's already a question of whether he would return to a certain game or not. And with no signs of improvement, it's just how long can you stay faithful? Same thing with Brandon Miller, and it sucks that it has to happen to him as well because this is his third season in the league, but yet it feels like we only seen 1.5 seasons of full play from him. And while I think it is too early to give up on Brandon Miller, we might have to consider whether LaMelo will be a Hornet for life. And I get why it's hard to move on. Just finding a talent like him, thinking of replacing him and how the replacements in the package will not even live up to the same amount of production, like I get that. But also sometimes you just have to pull the plug, like it's necessary. Also, still some questions about Coach Lee, whether he is that right guy. So very troublesome for that main core. Despite how young those guys are, time's definitely running out for them. But the big shining light, the silver lining that Charlotte can hang their hat on, is their surrounding pieces, their depth. They nailed the draft. Not only is Concanepo balling out, but you also nailed the second round draft picks in Sion James and Ryan Kalkbrenner. Those two are already off to hot starts as well, and it really does say a lot about their impact and production when you see that they have started in a significant amount of Hornets games. I also have a couple more favorite players on their squad, including Trey Mann and Musa Diabate. So that's the thing with this Hornets team, man. They have the pieces to really complement main stars, but we just don't know if the main stars are the right ones. I hope they are. I mean, on paper, it should be. Last, and certainly least, you have the last tier. Lord help us all. Clippers, Pelicans, Kings, and Mavericks. Now, even though these four are in the same group, I do have two of them. We have two winners, y'all, in terms of who I think has the worst outlook. So let's begin with the first two exceptions. Let's begin with Dallas. Man, their situation, it's like beating a dead horse at this point. Everyone knows they lost a trade and just what the boogeyman had left. Yeah, I mean, some players are trying their best. Shout out PJ Washington and Brandon Williams. I see you. I also can't forget about Musa Cisse. But yeah, vibes are down. Vibes are just completely down. Kyrie Irving, it feels like he's not going to return until February or March, maybe January, but that's a little bit too hopeful. But there's a smidge of positivity I could sense. Obviously, Cooper Flag is getting better and better as the season progresses. You also look down at the rest of the roster, and opposing teams would absolutely love to have a guy like PJ Washington and Daniel Gafford. Maybe Klay Thompson as well. I mean, it is looking kind of rough for him, but it's not impossible. I know there are several teams who would want shooting. And if the cards are played right, you could get some desirable picks and young assets, from the trade scenarios I mentioned earlier, along with the highly touted Anthony Davis deal. But just looking at this team, it seems like there will be a good few years before they can get back to that nice relevance. It's just, come on, Nico, this was completely preventable. Next up, we have the LA Clippers. Now I know that there's still a lot of time for them to turn things around, but things have been looking super ugly. The defense has been atrocious. The age has already caught up to them. Bradley Beal, unfortunately, and I guess to some very predictably, is out for the entire season with a brutal hip injury. I've already seen a lot of Clippers fans put Coach Lue on the hot seat, some even demanding for him to be fired. And guess what? It doesn't end there, because their pick for this season belongs to OKC. Yep, that Paul George trade is still not over. And also Kawhi Leonard out several games with injury. What else is new? So although they can turn things around and at the very least not have their pick be in the upper echelon in the lottery, it's very tough to even accomplish that in the madhouse that is the Western Conference. Main thing is the defense. If the defense doesn't turn things around, a smidge of what it was from last season, then might as well shut down any hope you had for them at least being like a top 6 seed. And if they do decide to turn things around, which kind of seems unlikely, it seems like Ballmer is the type of guy who always wants fans in seats. They at least have some contracts to move. It's very similar to Dallas's position, although I'm not sure if a lot of teams are really having their eyes on Kawhi or Harden. Oh, and by the way, Coach Lue, it's about time you gave the young guys some minutes. You know, giving approximately 24 minutes to Kobe Sanders, good for you. Where was this energy when Kobe Brown and Musa Diabate were sitting on the bench? But that's my spiel on the Clippers. And now we move on to the two teams that I state have the worst future, the worst possible position to be in as a team. The New Orleans Pelicans and Sacramento Kings. In fact, let's just group them together. They don't really deserve their own segment. The main reason as to why I don't believe in these two, despite the amount of talent that they have, is the front offices. My goodness. Disaster class, if you search up that word on the dictionary, the image of Joe Dumars and Vivek will be the very first things to pop up. They keep trying to tell us in the press conferences when they constructed these teams that these teams are always going to play hard every night and they're definitely not going to be at the bottom. Who believed them? Like, yeah, maybe we didn't expect them to fall down this hard, but guess what? We're here now, and for them to be this terrible, I mean, not even half. I'm pretty sure 80% of the NBA community never saw anything positive out of these two teams. When we look over at Sacramento, I know that Monte McNair is out the door and Scott Perry pretty much took over. He hasn't done really much transactions aside from free agency signings, but even I'm not that confident in him and any future stuff involving Sacramento. As long as Vivek is there watching everything like an eagle, it will be bad. Like, very few things will occur. And who knows, maybe Scott Perry can turn the narrative around. But to do that with what he's left with, yeah, I could barely see. I mean, it's not like Levine, DeRozan, and Sabonis are some minor role players. I also wouldn't be surprised if they get fleeced on the Keon Ellis deal. I mean, just how they handled that whole situation overall, it's pretty sad to see. Also, before I forget, when you look at the young prospects and rookies the Kings have, they certainly aren't bad. It's just how much does the front office and coaching staff really value them? I mean, I rarely see Devin Carter play any meaningful minutes aside from 1 or 2 games. Nick Clifford is a hooper, like he is the brightest of the bunch, but I don't know how much Scott Perry and Coach Christie trust him. And Maxime Renault, he is the perfect depiction of a raw prospect. I'm not sure what plans Sacramento has in store for him, and I feel like they don't even know either. So yeah, that button for lighting the beam, it's definitely going to get a lot of dust by the time the season ends. And one last quick note on New Orleans, like I know they have guys like Trey Murphy, Jose Alvarado, Herbert Jones, DeJounte Murray, Jordan Poole, Kevon Looney, like those are a nice collection of talent. But again, with knowing how Joe Dumars is conducting business, and I believe Troy Weaver is there as well, like how those two together, like how? I just know that when they give up on being competitive, they will lose some trades, like no doubt they will be at the losing end. So yeah, they can fire all the head coaches they want, they can change the roster as much as they want. Jeremiah Fears, Derek Queen, Nick Clifford, Keon Ellis, all of them are trying to do their best to save whatever is left in terms of positives, but as long as you have those general managers in charge, as long as you have the owners in charge, then oh boy. So yeah, that concludes this video. Those are the worst scenarios, situations, whatever you call it, for teams and fan bases to be in. Let me know what you guys think though. Do you feel like these tiers should be shaken up a little? Do you feel like certain teams and their scenarios just aren't solvable at all? Let me know in the comments down below. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.